This episode is sponsored by Indie Rebel, a masterclass in independent filmmaking. When I was starting out in filmmaking, two books inspired me to no end: Rebel Without a Crew and the DV Rebel's Guide. I wanted to write a book that would inspire the next generation of indie filmmakers, the kind of book that I would want to read again and again to guide me through things. Culled from over a decade of experience, Indie Rebel walks you through the process of making your first movie step by step. You'll learn how to develop a story, write a script that you can shoot, how to pick out and use a camera, tricks for lighting and camera movement, different methods for getting good sound, short film ideas for learning how to make movies, how to run a set and direct actors, and of course post-production and distribution on the internet. If you've dreamt of making your own movie, Indie Rebel, a masterclass in independent filmmaking, is a must-read. Get your copy today, link in the description. Alright, so let's take a look at how we might accomplish this effect. I'm going to pop over to Fusion, and we're going to kind of just build on stuff we've already done, and throw a few new things at you, such as tracking, and I'll show you a trick for that. In fact, I'll show you that right now. So let's go ahead and delete the media out node, and we'll view our shot up here. And it's a very, very dark shot. We've got the actress holding a cell phone, the camera's moving, the phone's moving. There's a little bit of a rotation in 3D space with a perspective shifting and stuff, so we're going to need to account for that. But first, let's go and prepare this for tracking. A trick I like to use is to color correct the plate just before I track it. So I'm going to run a color corrector, and we'll just stick it up here off to the side. And then let's go and view it, and let's see if we can fix this image up a little bit. So I can brighten that, tweak that, and maybe a little contrast. Oh, too much contrast. Put the contrast back. But this, now, if I go Control P, you can see is a lot easier to see. We can see a lot more detail and stuff going on here on the phone. So this is a good thing. Let's go back to frame 0. And now, if I go Shift Space and I type in track, I have access to all of Fusion's built-in trackers. We have the camera tracker, which is for tracking a 3D shot, or doing an actual camera track in 3D, I should say. And then we have a planar tracker, and that's the one we want to use. There's also a 2D tracker down here, which lets you track a point or two and just moves things around in 3D or in 2D space. And then the surface tracker is used for some other advanced features that we're not going to get into today. But we're going to deal with the planar tracker. So let's add it. Let's view it. And the very first thing we need to do is to outline what we want to track. So you can see my cursors turn into a crosshair. And so I can come up and literally draw outlines around what I'm wanting to track here. And I'll push that back up to there. The big thing I'm trying to make sure I do is I include the three pieces of the ear and the camera, the corners, the three corners that are available, and if I can get all of that, maybe even the button too, we should have a halfway decent track. So looking at my settings here in the inspector, you can either do a hybrid point area or just regular point. We'll just go regular point for now. Motion type, we are going to leave it perspective because the phone is rotating in 3D space. If I was just filming a wall, I might be able to get away with like either a fine or translation rotation scale. But for this one, we're going to use perspective. And that's all you need to do. Luma channel is fine. I've brightened up the Luma channel for it. So let's go ahead and just track forward. There it is. Tracking is complete. It's literally that easy. Now what I want to do is go ahead and hit Create Planar Transform. And we're going to use this here in a minute. Okay. Let's go ahead and bring in our wallpaper that we want to use as our background. And I have one down here. If we view it, we can see we've got a 1080 by 1920 image. And that's a cool looking wallpaper. The problem we're going to have is that the planar tracker needs the 16 by 9. So if I view this, it needs 1920 by 1080. So what we want to do is we want to take this, stretch it into a 1920 by 1080, and then we can run it into our tracking transform node down here. So let's do that real quick. We're going to add in a background, and I'm going to double check my background size is 1920 by 1080, and it is. I'm now going to merge the wallpaper on top of it. Let's go ahead and view the merge, and then we want to add a transform node. I'm going to uncheck use size and aspect, and now I'm just going to play with my X and my Y's to fill the frame. So that fills that there, And then that fills it down there. So we've stretched our wallpaper to fit. Very easy, very cool. Now we can run this into our planar transform. And then we're going to composite our planar transform on top of our original footage without the color corrections. So I'm going to add a merge node down here. I'm going to take the foreground and run that into my planar transform. And I'm going to take the background and run that into the original plate. So now let's go ahead and take a look at this. And it's not working. Why is it not working? I thought it was supposed to track that planar surface. And it did, and it is. The problem is now we need to take this crazy distorted image that we have here and pin this to the phone itself. So we're going to use our keyframe that we set. Frame 0 is our reference frame. And so I'm going to make sure I'm at that reference frame. And in between the background and the planar transform here, I want to add something called a corner positioner. And this is a really cool node. What I can do, if I make sure that I'm viewing my final output, and I bring up my corner positioner, you can see I've got all 4 corners of that phone screen now. So I can literally just come in, and we'll just get them close first, then we'll finesse it here in just a moment. Kind of get them where they need to be. Now we're going to zoom in, take a closer look. So I can see I've got one corner right here, one right there. I've got one right down there. And then this other one's hidden in the palm of her hand. So I'm just looking at the edge here and the edge on the bottom. Oh, wrong edge. There we go. Let's bring that back in a little bit. Maybe about like that. All right. So now we should have a wallpaper that sticks. Let's take a look. There you go. And the effect is basically almost done. We're going to need to do some roto here on the hand, and maybe we want to add something to the screen here too. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick before we get dealing with transforming stuff down. I want to come up here, and we're going to add a text node. Okay, put the text on top. We'll merge it on top, just like that. Come on, stay in there. And we want our text to say something really badass like indie rebel, because rebels are cool. And we're going to scale this up. And we can see that that's right there on the screen, and that's looking good. Now again, it's all getting distorted down here, but it gets undistorted with the planar transform, and we're using a corner positioner to put it into space where it needs to go. So we're already off to a really good start here. Let's go and clean this up a little bit, though. I think we can make it a little bit better. I want to cut out her hand and her thumb here that overlaps the image a little bit. So now's a good time to show you guys how to rotoscope. But before we do that, I think we should probably work on our comp cleanup here. So let's organize things a little bit more. Do that. And then we'll put all these into an underlay. Do that. And then we'll make this color orange to kind of match the screen there. So that works for that. And then we're merging this stuff on top. So I always like having a straight connection between my main footage that came in and where it's going to end up at the final output. So I think doing that's going to work really, really well. So let's learn about roto and how this can work. This is kind of cool too. If you recall in the introductory video where I showed you guys how you can use your roto tools, your polygons and stuff, your masks, to mask out certain effects. If you recall, I also showed you it works with a merge node too, and that's exactly what we're going to do now. So I'm just going to add a polyline mask. I want to view my original shot here. And let's go back to, well, right here in the center is fine to start with. It doesn't matter. And I just want to kind of come in and add in some stuff like that. And then kind of swoop over the top. And then over. All right. And then back to there. So now we've got a pretty rough but good enough roto feature going on. And if we come in and go right click, we can go ahead and set a keyframe. So we have a keyframe set now. Now what I can do is jump ahead, 4 or 5 frames. So I'm on what, frame 24. So let's go just all the way up to frame 30. And it's just a matter now of coming in and selecting the points you want to move. And literally moving them to where they need to be. And that's looking good like that. And we're just going to do this for the whole entire thing. So now we'll jump ahead another like 5 frames. And you can see these white tick marks here. These are the keyframes. So it's really easy to look at this and see where my keyframes are. All right, let's do it again. So I'm going to come up, I'm going to select it all. We're going to go ahead and line that to there. That's looking good. And then what you can do is you can go in and fill in the in-between frames. This is called tweening. It dates back to the old days of Disney and stuff. So we'll just move 1 point to set the keyframe. Okay, we're off a little bit here. Let's just go ahead and fix the few that we need. And if you wanted to, we could even do this keyframing viewing our adjusted version. Okay, doesn't matter, but this might help you see a little bit better what we're trying to do. And let's go and jump to the very end of the shot. Frame 40. And that's looking good. And we're going to soften this out here in a minute too, but just for now to get us going. Let's tween that one. That looks good. All right, now we'll jump over here to the beginning. Now you can do like all the way. So I've got a keyframe here at frame 24. I could go all the way to frame 1, but look how much motion there's in there in between. So I find that using about 5 frames at a time is really, really kind of the sweet spot to making this work. And we'll go another 5. And I'm doing this in real time because I want you to see that you don't have to be afraid of rotoscoping. This is like a very, very easy thing to do that's going to really help the videos and the films that you produce. Okay. And really, I'm just concerned about this area right here. This is the most important part of this. Go back over here. We'll tween that out. And ideally, for an indie rebel, you should not have to do every single frame. If you follow my advice and kind of just stick to, groups of 5 and then tween them at 3, 2 or 3. About like that. That's good. I don't worry about the other stuff up there. Let's go and tween these. That looks good. Go back over here. Go all the way to frame 0. Drop that in too. Fix that one. Tween it. Okay, that's good. And I'm just going to kind of click through and make sure everything's looking good. Fix things as we need to. Awesome. Cool. So now what we can do is let's go and move our tracking stuff up. Keep those out of the way. I'm going to connect my polyline mask to this merge. So I've got my merge right here. And if I mask it, we can see, well, it's kind of working, just did the wrong thing. So just go and select your polyline and click, or hit invert, click invert. And we can see that that's looking pretty good. Now I can come up and, where is it here? Go back in my polyline. I want to soften the edge a little bit. Like that maybe. And it just makes it a little soft. That might be too much softness. Let's try turning that down a little bit. Somewhere down there. And just makes it look and feel natural and organic. And if we play this through from the beginning, okay, we can see that that's not too bad. That looks pretty dang good. We're off to a really good start here. And for what production you're doing, that may be enough for you. You may have already in Photoshop designed your interface and made it do what it needs to do. You can also build that out here in Fusion and add animation to the different parts. But really, this is all we need to do to make this thing happen. And that's looking not too bad. A few other things that we maybe would want to do would be like adding some glow around her fingers and stuff like that. And again, we're just going to use that same rotoscoping process to do that. We also want to turn on the motion blur too. I always forget that. Go into your planar tracker, go over to settings, hit motion blur. And then I like setting the quality up to like half my frame rate. So my frame rate's 24, I'm going to set this to 12. And that's going to make for a really nice, really smooth motion blur as this moves around the frame. And what you'll find too is that if it looks like it was not tracked in at all, like it was maybe a little bit off, sometimes motion blur is the key, and you add that little bit of motion blur to it, and it really locks it into the frame pretty good. So that is the look at how to do a screen replacement. And like I said, this technique will work for TVs, it works for computer monitors, it works for cell phones, as you can see here. And the reason why I used black, let's talk about that real quick, is because if I had reflections in the scene, I don't think there were really any here. If I look at the original shot, there are no reflections, but had there been reflections, by keeping the screen black, I can come in here to this merge and set the apply mode to screen. And that actually lets you then keep your reflections that already exist. It's really cool, adds a lot of realism. Now, the pain in the butt is that we had to go through and roto out her thumb down here. And if they got their thumbs interacting with the screen a lot more, you got to roto all that out too. Whereas if I had a blue or green background on the phone screen to begin with, back here on the original shot, if that was blue or green, I could just come in and do a chroma key effect to it real easy. The other advantage then to having the blue or the green is that you can have tracking points on there like I show in the book. We showed an example of a screen grab that was all green with the tracking points on it. And that can make a very difficult track very easy to do. But you see on this, even though the shot was extremely dark, we were able to brighten it up. We were able to get good track points. We got enough off of it, which is the important thing. And the final composite doesn't look half bad at all. If I wanted to, I could come in, I could turn down the blend on that a little bit more, make it more of a dimmer screen. Maybe that's a little bit more realistic for what we're trying to do, and then I don't have to deal with the glow on the hands and stuff like that. But so much of visual effects really is subjective. It's about what do you like as the filmmaker, as the director, and in this case, as the visual effects artist too. You know, hopefully you are the director of your own project, and you have no one to answer to but yourself. And so, yeah, you can get away with something like that. Finally, let's go ahead. We'll add our media out right here. And now we know that we can come back into our timeline. And there's our final shot right there, ready to go. So, thanks for watching. Hope you guys learned something. And we'll see you in the next video in this course.